I will be back.
See you in a bit.
That's our first conversation this morning. Thanks for joining us. The introduction of the new valuation system, identified as the Vehicle Identification Number, VIN, in January.
There's VIN, there's NIN.
No. VIN is for vehicles. Are you a vehicle?
No, I said there is VIN.
Yes.
There's NIN.
That's for National Identity Number. That's for human beings.
Oh, for human beings, and this is for cars.
For vehicles,
okay, I wonder which one is coming next.
Maybe the one for computers.
Oh, for
anyway.
CIN.
Well, that VIN, the new valuation system, has continued to receive criticism by stakeholders in the country. However, during the week, the Nigeria Customs Service held a meeting with stakeholders to resolve the looming outrage. What is the looming outrage? Some of us may not even be aware of it.
It's not looming anymore because they've been protesting.
Maybe there are some larger looming, such as fuel scarcity.
There's more coming.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we have two people joining us on this program this morning. Lucky Amiwero is President, National Council of Managing Directors of Licensed Customs Agents. He joins us from our studio in Abuja, as well as Timmy Bomade, who is Customs National PRO. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Well, let me begin with Mr. Amiwero. Maybe you want to, he's joining us virtually. Maybe you want to, first of all, give us an idea exactly what the issues are. I'm pretty sure, many people may not even be aware, Mr. Amiwero, what the issues are. So exactly what are the issues, just to be clear? If you don't mind, could you kindly unmute? We can't hear you, sir. Okay. Can't hear you yet. Okay, while we're dealing with that one, Mr. Bomadi is the a PRO, the National PRO of the Nigeria Customs Service. Thanks for joining us again, Mr. Bomadi. So maybe you want to first of all give us a quick outlook of what the issues are so people know to follow the conversation. We can't hear you as well. Well, we'll be back. Let's deal with those tech issues and we'll be... All right, let's get this conversation on the road now. Mr. Amiwero, we introduced you earlier. Could you kindly give us an idea?
Okay, great.
Yes.
Not see your face. That would happen.
I will take time. Come.
All right, go ahead now, Mr. Amiwero.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Mr. Amiwero?
You're not hearing from them.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Mr. Amiwero? Okay, we can hear you, but can you hear me now? Okay. I guess we can't. The issue needs to be sorted. But the one of the things that one may want to look at this concerning this issue is we really can't say much until we hear from them. But the issue, but when it comes to vehicles, this particular one I think concerns those who bring the vehicles in.
Yeah.
Don't forget that if you don't have the right figures, the right papers for your cars, you will have conversations with some people on the roads, such as one of your friends that we spoke with last week. so
I think this policy, that's why you said we can't really say anything until we hear from them. My understanding of it is that now AI will give you all the information that you need about a particular vehicle. So an agent, for instance, cannot come and lie that this car was used for 2 years only, whereas it was used for 5 years, or it was used for 5 and you are lying that it was used for 2. AI will determine all of that, so that the duties can now be determined based on the true figures, not what an agent is saying, through which they can cheat government most of the time. That's my understanding of it, and these guys are protesting.
What's it, at the end of the day, it comes to Naira and Kobo.
Don't forget that their target is 4.1 trillion?
Every year, that's customs.
Yes. I think that's the figure.
Okay. So
So that is now in jeopardy if this policy is not adopted.
But you know, another question anyone may want to ask is, why frustrate businesses? Why? Because if people are, I mean, if what you're saying is to be, I'm just to go by what you're saying, not validating.
Mine is not validated as well, because we haven't heard from those who are involved.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just my own reading of it,
So,
and I may be wrong.
But I'm saying, if we have so few, the reason we have so few people doing this kind of business is probably because not everyone has that courage to go into certain businesses. I mean, if it's that, costly to get involved, to get into the business, it definitely is something that should give anyone cause for worry.
Yeah.
So if my business will cost me, say, 10 naira or 10,000 naira to run, and you are asking me, I mean, that 10,000 naira is X you, and I know that my bills from you is another 10,000 naira. I'm going to put the price on the product.
Of course.
On the business. And if the more expensive it gets, the slower the business runs. So naturally people would go away. It would rather, because, I mean,
do something else.
Well, if I'm supposed to buy this vehicle and I don't buy it, I can just buy a bicycle or something like that.
But they say that by the old system, the duty for a used Corolla used to be something like 255,000. By this system, the duty would be something like 1.9 million. I mean, at 1.9 million for duty on a Corolla, how much are they going to sell it when it leaves the port?
I think you also need to get into this business. Let's ask Mr. Amiwero if...
I couldn't. I don't have the gall.
Don't talk about
I
that
don't have the gall.
Mr. Amiwero, I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, sir.
And we can hear you now, thankfully.
Jolly. So, take us through this conversation as we began earlier. What are the issues? We seem to be blabbing here. Maybe we don't even understand
we don't understand.
Well, thank you. I think the issues are very clear. We have a law that is not implemented. This law was passed in 2003. And this law was a WTO law, a process of valuation. And that is the only law we have in the country. It is called the Custom and Excise Management Act 20 of 2003. This law actually put in place the component of transaction value. And for a very long time, as a member of the Presidential Committee to Presidential Task Force to reform the custom in 2010, I presided over the valuation, the treatment of valuation within the Presidential Committee, and we invited the customs to change their policy. The policy they operate is ex-factory price policy. What is ex-factory price? Ex-factory price, that means you are buying this thing from the factory. And we have two types of vehicles coming to the country. We have a new vehicle and a used vehicle. And this new vehicle and used vehicle, you have one that is ex-factory. That means you're talking about a new vehicle that is actually taken off from the factory. We are talking about the cost. But the used vehicles, by the custom and excise legal notice 30, is vehicle that is used, purchased, and used and imported to the country. As we are speaking today, customer is using an illegal component, which is called ex-factory price. Ex-factory price have no negotiated price. That means what you're supposed to have got is purchase price, not ex-factory price. The implication is that you are having an ex-factory. That means the used vehicles that have been purchased by somebody have a new transaction. And the component of the law is that it is based on transaction value. There must be a buyer and a seller. If there's no buyer and a seller, it is not transaction. So what custom is doing actually is imposing value and uplifting value, which is in contravention of the laws. And what has happened is that they are operating what they call artificial intelligence, or trying to bring in internet pricing and every other thing that is not based on the law. So what they are doing is illegal. It is not in compliance with the article. The article is very clear. You have 6 sequential methods in arriving at import duty collection on car. You have transaction value method 1. You have transaction identical value method 2, similar value method 3, sales method 4, computed method 5, and fallback method. All these methods are supposed to apply sequentially. You don't jump. What custom is doing have no basis as far as the law is concerned.
Okay.
And what they have done is that they are trying to impose value that is not based on the law.
Let me quickly take the opening comments of...
It is very clear.
Just 1 second, Mr. Amiwero. Let me quickly take the opening comments of Mr. Bomodi on this as well. Well, I don't know. Let me believe that their association has had conversations with customs. How are you taking that?
Thank you once again. Yeah, indeed, we've had a series of meetings with different associations and licensed agents over this issue of value, and it will do us good to look at the historical context of this whole matter and how we arrived at the decision to automate our processes. Mr. Amiwero there talked about the transaction value of in relation to valuing vehicles, and yeah, he's correct. The WTO agreement on valuation is clear about that. But the question I would like to ask him is how many times people have been able to present customs with genuine invoices concerning the importation of vehicles, because you cannot talk about transaction value in isolation. We can talk about it in relation to the honesty of the person that is presenting an invoice, an attested invoice. We'll go back to that. The idea of automating our processes came from the fact that agents over time complained about the inconsistency in values used for the clearing of used vehicles. They said the complaint, I mean, in a series of meetings, was that our valuation officers in different commands were not giving the same values for the same make and models of cars.
Mr. Bomodi, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. Before you go on, we need to follow you as you go. What exactly do you mean by transaction value?
Okay, the
give us an example so that we are on the same page with you.
Okay, the transaction value for any import is the value paid or payable for that import. That is the WTO definition. Either the value actually, the price actually paid or payable for an import. And as he said, the transaction value is what is reflected in the import document, the invoice. What is invoice? And then WTO agreement says that if you can't get that value, if you can't get the correct value, you can use the value of identical goods, you can use the value of similar goods, there are 6 criteria down: the computed method, the deductive method, and the last being the fallback method. All these are values that you can use where you are not certain that the value declared invoice is the correct value. And this is the challenge we have with used vehicles. It's a historical challenge because we've seen over time that importers and agents have not been really transparent in the values that they give us, for duty. I will go back to an example you cited. You talked about a Corolla. They make that reference easily. They say a Corolla that used to clear for 600,000 now is about 1.5 million. But what they don't tell you is what make and model of Corolla are they talking about? Are you talking about a 2020 Corolla? Are you talking about a 2019 Corolla? Or are you talking about a 2010 Corolla? It is important that we know these details because it is the make and model of a car that will determine the value that custom gives it for the purposes of paying duty. Okay. It's very important. Now, what the VIN valuation process system has done is that it has taken the responsibility of customs valuation officers, and it has automated a process such that once you put the 17-digit VIN number of a vehicle, it will tell you the actual make and model of that vehicle, as opposed to people declaring, let's say they are bringing a 2020 vehicle and they declare it as a 2010 vehicle just because they want lower values and they want to pay lower duties. So false declaration has been one of the major challenges that we've encountered in the ports. And what VIN valuation does is that it tries to, by automating the process, it makes it very difficult or almost impossible for people to just describe a vehicle without stating its unique ID number.
But, Mr. Bomodi, perhaps one of the challenges
that helps us in knowing exactly what the vehicle is and tells us the range of values that could apply to that vehicle for the purposes of paying taxes.
Perhaps one of the challenges for the people, the operators in the industry, would probably be the costs on the business, because it will if it frustrates businesses, they will not be able to do business, and then consequently even the taxes that customs is intending to collect may dwindle over time.
Yes, indeed, we looked at all those factors, but you see, the customs is in the business of implementing policy, and the policy as regards importation of vehicles is very, very clear. We do know that there are components to assessing value for all imports, and these components are basically three. You have the FOB value, which is invoice value. You have the insurance component, which is a percentage of the invoice value. And then you have the freight value, which is the cost of transporting these items from overseas into the country. These are components of value. We know also that these components may vary over time. There is no market for used vehicles, for example, where the prices are consistent, all over. There may be differences in invoice value. There may be differences in freight value. So the custom has taken into consideration these factors and has looked for the ease of doing business, for the conveniences of businesses. Mr. Lucky said that the customs, our procedures is in violation of WTO agreements, and I will disagree with that. They are not in violation. What we've had historically are individuals, agents and importers that have consistently played games with the values of these vehicles, because you see the inclination we've seen is for them to want to pay lower taxes.
Okay.
And when they do that, yes, by manufacturing final documents.
That's to be expected. Everybody wants to pay lower taxes, Mr. Bomodi. Everybody wants to pay lower taxes. I'm pretty sure you're aware of that one. Well, Mr. Amiwere, it would seem like Mr. Bomodi doesn't completely agree with you on some of the issues that have been raised. Perhaps. But
thank you very much.
I also
you gave me too much time to talk because we are the people protesting.
Okay.
You are giving us much time, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I was appointed to reform the customs, and I brought up violation principle into the country. It's talking sentiment, it's not talking law. What we are talking about You cannot operate a VIN valuation on a vehicle. One, they are sequential principles. The WTO, the gap valuation agreement, is something that has been domesticated, passed in the National Assembly. What is talking about the sentiment is not law. Where do you derive your powers to implement VIN valuation? What is VIN valuation? VIN valuation is internet pricing. And when you look at the laws are very clear. You cannot use internet pricing. You cannot use artificial pricing. You cannot use web pricing. There is no provision in the act that allows you to use discretion on the value. The VIN valuation have 6 different principles. One is transaction value, which is the first method. 2 is transaction value method identical. The 3rd is similar. The 4th and 5th is reserved for the importer. It's not for customs. Customs don't have the right to pin value. If you look at the law, they don't have any right to touch value in the country. By the provision of Section 12 of that Custom and Excise Management Act, the provision of Section 12 is very clear. Custom is to, in every provision, is to present their documents and call the importer and tell the importer to bring your information to be able to actualize the value.
Okay, Mr.
And in provision Section 8, Section 8 makes all the principles sequential. You cannot pass 1 and go to 6. Customs don't have anything they are operating. They are operating on sentimental law. And what you are saying is that comply with the law. There's a law passed by National Assembly, which is globally accepted. VIN valuation cannot be subsumed in the law. Number 1, you have almost close to 50 criteria of arriving at import duty collection on cars. The custom legal notice 30 has 6. 1 is country of manufacture, 2 is capacity, 3 is wear and tear, 4 is the value itself of the cost of the goods, then the 6 is the odometer. He did not talk about that. You're talking about cost insurance and freight, that is normal. But on cars, what you have on cars, according to transaction value, is the purchase price. I presided over the evaluation. Okay. I presided over the custom value presidential committee.
Mr.
What he's talking about is sentiment, is not law.
Mr. Miwero,
yes.
let me just give you an example so that I can determine whether I'm actually following your argument. So yes. A car may be a 2020 Corolla, but it's an accidented car. So for that reason, I pay very little money for it, and I bring it into Nigeria. But if VIN is applied to that car, it will be valued as a 2020 Corolla, full stop.
That is the truth. You see the problem.
Am I correct? Am I correct?
You are correct. What is the work of the customs? The work of the customs is, 1, is to implement government policy. Is this VIN violation government policy? It's customs policy, it's not government policy. Because number 1, by the section 36 of the Custom and Excise Management Act, the minister supposed to sign that procedure. It's an import and export procedure and call the stakeholders. It's a customs, and customs don't have a right to introduce a policy without going to the minister. I don't know whether that minister approved that policy. And if he approved the policy, it's not in line with the law. There's no provision you can capture VIN in the law. What we are trying to say is that customs should comply with the law. There are provisions in the law. Section 2, which is identical value, says when a vehicle cannot be identified, cannot be determined, under Section 1, you go to vehicle that already accepted, and you have a lot of these things that are already accepted. What customs have done is using artificial value. Invariably, they are hanging their concept on internet pricing. Internet pricing is not negotiated price. It's not acceptable by the convention. So what we are saying in essence is that customs should comply. There's a law. There's no VIN violation in the law.
Okay.
There is no how you can incorporate VIN violation in that law. The law is treated, and you have more than 50 criteria of arriving at import duty collection on cars. Let me explain. For instance, the freight rate from Port Harcourt and Tinkan are not the same. And it's part of the consideration, it's one of the criteria. Number 2, the wear and tear of a Peugeot car are not the same. There's a lot of criteria. You have the time, you have the quantity, you have the value, you have everything. There's more than 50 criteria to arrive at import duty collection. VIN valuation is an imposition.
Okay.
And we are saying that imposition, go back to the law. There's a law passed.
Okay.
You might even, and that law is a global law.
Okay.
The law you are operating here is what you are operating in Ghana and all over the place.
Okay. All right.
If
all right,
you
then.
are operating a valuation procedure that is based on the law, nobody, you have been operating, even though it is not legal. When you are operating your extractive price, it's illegal.
Okay,
and you don't have the component of purchase price. What you need in a car is purchase price. There must be a relationship between the buyer and seller. That is transaction value. You don't impose people because you are putting on uniform. No, what you are saying is that comply with the law that is passed in National Assembly.
Okay,
relate your VIN valuation to the law.
Mr. Ibero, can Mr. Mamadi just make comments, because I can hear his voice in the background. He has something to say about what you're saying.
Yeah, Mr. Lucky, his emphasis on the illegality of VIN valuation is, to me, is funny, because we are living in 2022 and we have to use the tools of the moment to solve the problems of the moment. And that is where technology comes in. The vehicle ID number is a 17-digit number that captures all the characteristics of a vehicle and makes it virtually impossible for anybody to make false declarations to government for the purposes of paying taxes. The 17 digits in the VIN valuation specifically talks about all the things that Mr. Lucky is mentioning there. So imagine that an officer that needs to take a decision as to either the validity of a value presented or not has to go through the books to run through maybe the 15 criteria that it talks about and to say, oh, how does that facilitate trade? On the one hand, they want facilitation of trade. On the other hand, they don't want automation. On one hand, they talk about the values that they present for customs. I want to ask Mr. Lucky, how many times have persons that imported used vehicles presented the original invoice for which they use in purchasing those vehicles? You talk about transaction value for salvage vehicles. There's a criteria for importing salvage vehicles. You need an export certificate, you need a salvage certificate, and there are other documents that you must have, because from the countries of origin, you can't buy salvage vehicles just from an individual. Those are insurance auctions, and we know how these things are purchased. The fact that the car is accidented, the level of damage of the vehicle, the odometer of that vehicle, and other characteristics still determines the value of that vehicle. And we have access to that data. The VIN number of the vehicle gives you the historical data concerning that particular vehicle, the number of owners that had owned that vehicle, the kind of damage that vehicle has, and all other characteristics. So Mr. Lucky wants to take us back some 10, 15 years ago, when the Nigerian Customs Service is intent on moving forward. It's intent on harmonizing our processes, intent on simplifying our processes, and intent on automating all our processes. And this is what we are talking about. We are talking about removing human interference in the process. We are talking about unnecessary arguments when it comes to the value of goods. We are talking about people making honest and transparent declarations when it comes to the importation of vehicles. And we really need to be forward-looking in our approach. Again, we would want to plead with agents. We understand the challenges that they are going through. We know that, when it comes to paying taxes, people are never comfortable with doing, the things that are expected of them. We also know that the process of transiting from a manual dipping process to an automated process is one that has certain challenges. So all it needs is time. We've not done anything illegal. The Nigerian Customs Service has not done anything illegal. We've been consistent in our approach when it comes to the issue of values. And we've always tried to let the agents know that whatever it is that you are doing now, whatever process that has been adopted now, there is room for improvement. And this improvement can only be achieved when we adopt the use of modern day tools. Artificial intelligence is one of them. Again, to correct the impression that Mr. Lucky tried to create, he talks about internet value. We're not talking about internet value, even though even the WTO agrees that we can use modern technology to get facts concerning imports of vehicles. We can talk about the use of blockchain. We can talk about the use of artificial intelligence. All these are things that modern day customs tries to use, not only to facilitate trade, but to make sure that that integrity is built into the supply chain process. And that is what we are trying to do.
Okay.
We had a town hall meeting in Lagos, and we were able to get feedback from the stakeholders, all those that were present on that day. And we observed something critical and why this challenge came. Before VIN valuation was introduced, there was an attempt to engage agents. We had different occasions where representatives from customs from Abuja went to Lagos and tried to inform stakeholders, importers, and agents about what it will entail to migrate from the manual process to the automated process. Guess what? We learned at the town hall meeting that most of these agents sent people in their offices that had no ability to understand what was being introduced. And worst of all, when they went back to their offices, they couldn't communicate the whole training that was given to them. They couldn't communicate to their bosses. And then when the implementation phase came on, we now started having complaints.
Okay. Well, Mr. Bamodi, before we are also accused of siding with you by Mr. Amiwero, he has already accused us of giving you more time already. But, well, so, Mr. Amiwero, there was that meeting held, and our understanding is that the meeting was held with stakeholders to resolve the looming outage. In your opinion, and from your own perspective, how far gone is that resolution? Mr. Amiwero, can you hear me?
Sorry, Mr. Amiwero wasn't at that meeting. He wasn't at that meeting. There were other stakeholders that were there at that meeting.
Okay.
And we told them that.
Are you saying, just a second.
Let me talk.
Just a second, Mr. Amiwero. Are you saying, me? Well, if, just a second, Mr. Amiwero, let me ask Mr. Bamodi, if yes, the managing directors of licensed customs agents were not at that meeting, then who are the stakeholders?
They are there. You don't expect me to be there. I was appointed to reform customs, and I brought that law. What he's telling you is semantics. Custom since 2006, custom has been automated. What you are trying to introduce is illegal. Tie that thing you are introducing to the law. If you tie it to the law, you don't have any problem. What is artificial intelligence? Where do you have artificial intelligence in the law? How do you get artificial intelligence? Internet pricing. That is what you use. You have a lot of this problem with finance. Everybody. You're almost killing the country. All the SMEs are gone. And I want to tell you, custom is not to make revenue. Custom is to balance the trade in the economy. Tie this, what has been. VIN is chassis number. You can change chassis number. You can even change chassis number from abroad. You can change engine number from abroad. What are you talking about bringing 15, maybe something? You must know the person you are talking to. You are talking to somebody who was appointed to reform you people.
So essentially, Mr. Amiwero, you're saying, just a second, Mr. Amiwero. Are you saying essentially, Mr. Amiwero, yes, that the meeting didn't have any effect?
Nothing. They left there disgracefully and went back to say they are coming back to go and meet agents.
Okay, just a second. Let me take on the Vice President of Association of Nigerian Licensed Customs Agents, Mr. Kayode Farrington, who joins us also virtually from London. Thank you, Mr. Farrington, for joining us this morning. You've been listening to some of the conversation, I'm pretty sure of that. So, first of all, what is your impression about what is going on? It's illegal, it's not against the law, all those issues many people want to understand.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be on board. Number one, it is illegal, as the senior agent has said. But the most important thing is that the issue of the VIN number will have all embraced it. All the custom needed to do
dear.
Mr. Farrington, okay, we'll bring him back. So, Mr. Amiwero, in the light of the prevailing circumstance, what are the options on the table? Are you hoping that you'll be able to... because at the end of the day, customs still have to do their jobs. I don't know where... Just a second. I don't know how you would, you know, when you say that customs is not to make money, I'm wondering where that is coming from, because they are supposed to tax some things that are coming in. So they definitely are supposed to make money according to the law.
Maybe you have not looked at the law. Custom is for revenue. Their revenue function is 10%. The other function is to implement the economic policy of this country. If the custom is wrong, the economy will go wrong. Revenue is 10%. Go and look at their law. Custom is involved in everything about the nation. After the constitution, the next document is the SEMA. Nobody said they should not do what they want to do, but comply with the law. There are principles. There's nothing called artificial intelligence in the law. There's no internet. All those he's talking about, they're not in the law.
But you heard him say that there is a need to comply with technology, the prevailing circumstances, the global standard tools.
Since 2006, I was a member of the Destination Inspection Committee who brought in the technology that this custom is using. Custom has been, this technology is there. What we are saying, incorporate your technology to the law.
Mr. Farrington, just hold on 1 second. Let Mr. Amiwero finish his thoughts. Go ahead, Mr.
What we are saying is that incorporate what you are doing to the law. What is artificial intelligence? Tell me what is artificial intelligence. If it's not internet value, what base? We are saying that, look, transaction value is buying and selling. What is transaction? There must be an element of sales of contract. It is talking trash. Comply with the law. What we are saying? We're not telling you that, no, don't implement. There are criteria.
Okay.
And these criteria must be followed. It's a global legal document.
Okay.
Signed in 2003. That is only the evaluation law we have in the country.
All right, the point you are making is very clear here, Mr. Amiwero.
What you are saying is that they should comply with the law.
With the law, okay.
Not impose law.
We'll take him up on that, but let's take the comments. Just a second, Mr. Amiwero. Yeah, let me take the comments of Mr. Farrington, who has rejoined this conversation. Please go ahead, Mr. Farrington.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me. The issue I'm saying is that all Chief Amiwero is saying is in order. There's no law backing this implementation. We actually noticed that there are variants when you have duty payments. If you have a 2015 vehicle, Tinkan, PTML, Apapa, all will never pay the same duty. And even when you leave these vehicles out of the port, you are still accosted by customs officer, extorted, harassed, really embarrassed. So all we're saying is that if customs want to implement the bill law, aside the fact that it is illegal, the stakeholders were not carried along. And legal notice 30 talked about wear and tear. I remember Madam talking about 2020 vehicle accidented. If you venture bringing it into Nigeria, all custom does, it will give you internet value, which is criminal. It is very illegitimate and it is very wrong. The wear and tear talks about the age of the vehicle, the odometer, and year of manufacture. All these things were not factored, were not put into consideration. And that is why it is very, very unfortunate when we shout that our customs are not behaving professionally. It is killing the trade of this country and it is killing our economy. We are privileged to have at least gone to other clients. We see the way it was done. Aside the fact that you go on internet value, before now, the ex-factory price that were implemented, these are data that were collected from somewhere. Okay, the man is talking about artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence? The artificial intelligence will collect the data. The data you are using, where did you get it from? These are the intelligent questions we need to answer. So if you must implement a new policy, the stakeholders, you cannot shave my head in my absence. Carry the stakeholder along. Let us subject it to criticism. We fine-tune it in the interest of the nation. We all want Nigeria to move forward, and we are delighted in a situation where you clear your vehicle, nobody accosts on the road. But what custom has done is to have actually cause serious pandemonium. As I talk to you now, over 1 billion naira will be lost as storage and damages, and the people that will pay it is the importer. And who is going to grunt it? The final consumer will be the one that will bear the consequences of what is happening in the port. It is very, very unfortunate that we are talking this way when every customs in the whole WTO 2013 said that every custom nation must carry along their custom brokers and their stakeholders so that you will be able to implement whatever is the government policy. Besides that, the Logistic Performance Index, which is a World Bank thing, the first thing that spoke about is predictability of every custom nation. We do not have it in Nigeria. If you bring in any consignment to Nigeria, God save your soul, aside the fact that it will be delayed, custom will twist it and slam with illegitimate demand notices. If you must implement this bill number, subject it to criticism, carry along your stakeholders, let us fine-tune it. We'll not ask you questions. Where have you gotten all these your values that you have inputted in the system? Not you going to the internet. If you go abroad now, I'm abroad now, I want to buy a vehicle now. The internet value, when it was stated, it said £10,000. Behold, when I spoke with the consignee, the man agreed to sell this vehicle for me £2,000. So aside the fact that we have Act 20, which is a violation act, and you cannot do anything outside the interest of the importer. We know that you are protecting the revenue of the federal government, but you can't be doing that at the detriment of our economy, because your implementation now is taking us backwards. Vis-a-vis even the e-commerce and the e-invoices of the CBN, you are always taking us backward in that nation, and it pisses me off when we see that other nations are moving Nigeria to move. And you're deliberately doing this. You were celebrating last week that you meet your target. How did you meet your target? How many people lost job? How many importers could not clear again? As I talk to you now, we have about 35% of importers who have said now that they will not clear until and they will not ship any vehicle until they are sure that the coast is clear. It is in the interest of this nation. Let us be very, very patriotic. We have a management team of Nigerian Customs Service that is not professional. With due respect, I have no apology for anybody. And that's what we are bringing. We are bringing the federal government to give us a proper officer who has been trained. He knows the law, he knows what he's supposed to do, and he knows how to carry along every stakeholder that is important in the industry.
Mr. Farrington, I beg your pardon. You spoke about talking to the stakeholders and carrying them along. But Customs did say that they held a stakeholders meeting. But those who attended were not capable of going back and reporting what exactly was discussed at the stakeholders meeting.
Let me tell you what they did. Customs knows how to carry the stakeholders along. There are over 6-7 associations that are registered in the freight holdings in the ports. We have the Council of Marine Directors, we have ANACA, we have NAGAF, we have AREF. All of this, you invite them when you want to do information dissemination, not bringing in crowd who will always come and say yes, sir, to whatever you are doing. They have never carried along the stakeholders. Each time they want to do this illegal thing, what they do is to pick people who are psychopaths, who are customs boys, they are former camp boys, who will always say they have had their stakeholder meeting and they will not be giving you the video. If I am telling you, by virtue of my position as vice president, that there was no stakeholder, Chief Lucky Amiwero is telling you that there's no stakeholder. If you talk to Dr. Anebuna now, Boniface, he will tell you that there was no stakeholder meeting. So where did you have your stakeholder? In the moon? Or in the airport?
Let's ask Mr. Bomodi that question that you have asked now. Mr. Bomodi, you have listened to the two gentlemen speak, that as far as they are concerned, they aren't aware of this stakeholders meeting with any intention to resolve the issues. How do you respond?
First of all, we had a stakeholders meeting. Before that, we had that is the one that was held on the first. We've had countless other meetings. The last one that he referred to was even in the national dailies, reflected in national dailies. We called, except they want to regard somebody as Chief Shitu as a non-entity in the industry. This is a former president of ANAC.
Oh dear. I hope we'll be able to bring Mr. Bomodi back. Okay, let's go ahead.
Yeah, we've had all of those that who is who in the industry. They were all there. So we have the video, we have the news coverage, we had news media. Even your TV station, Channels Television, was there to cover it. So it wasn't a secret thing. And prior to this period, the Nigeria Coast, for them to say, for Mr. Farrington to make that statement is really sad, because I have it on record that even in January, when VIN valuation was introduced, the ACG that was given that responsibility to brief stakeholders as to, how effective this thing was, got a call from Mr. Farinto. Mr. Farinto congratulated him on the introduction of VIN valuation and also told him that it was working. He told him that VIN valuation was working. I'm not saying that, I'm not slandering him. I'm telling you a matter of fact. So it is one thing they do to talk privately. Well, the statements they make in private and the statements in public are variance. And we should really question why they do that.
Well, I'm sure that Mr. Bomodi, I'm sure that Mr. Farrington would want to respond to that. Just a second, Mr. Farrington, just hold on. Hold on, Mr. Farrington. Hold on, Mr. Farrington. But there's a question that I want to ask you, Mr. Bomodi, and that's something that Chief Amiwere mentioned earlier, that this initiative that they're complaining about is not integrated in the law, that if you line it up with the law, that they will be okay with it.
Yes, he mentioned that, and I've tried to address it. He talked about the WTO agreement on value, on valuation, and he mentioned the transaction value. You cannot talk about the transaction value in isolation. You have to talk about it in reference to an invoice. Now, when you present an invoice is not a religious, a sacred document that cannot be queried. We have the right to query an invoice. And if we consider that somebody presents an invoice that has no relation with reality, then we can introduce down the road, as prescribed in the WTO agreement, either transaction value of identical goods, transaction value of similar goods. We can use the deductive method, we can use the computed method, and we can also use the fallback method. Okay. The deductive and computed method are not operational in Nigeria. So we have the first three and the last alternative. And when you're talking about vehicles, you see, I really don't get it. When people quarrel with information is everywhere.
Okay. Well, Mr. Bomodi, I'm sorry. We're running out of time, but I want us to be able to at least, if it is possible, use this as some form of basis to start a conversation that will resolve the issues. One of the risks that we have seen over time in the course of doing our own job here is that if the business environment is not comfortable for those who do it, they'll find other means. You are not unaware that some businesses have moved out of Nigeria because of what they call ease of doing business and conditions of service. So if this environment that the customs is operating in is not comfortable for them, there's a likelihood that they will ship their businesses outside of the country and find other means and ways of bringing them into the country. That will not serve the purpose of customs. That will not serve the purpose of the revenue that customs wants to generate. So is there a middle ground somewhere?
Yes, there definitely is a middle ground. So let me tell you what the customs had done. Prior to this period, when people bring in new vehicles, they pay a duty and a levy of the same amount. So duty 35%, levy 35%. Nigerian Customs Management made a presentation to the government, to the Federal Ministry of Finance, for the reduction of levy for new cars, and the levy was drastically reduced. Now, if that is not a policy direction that takes into consideration the needs of Nigerians, I don't know what that is.
Okay, that's
Secondly, as it concerns used vehicles, what the service is saying is this: when you come to us, be as transparent as possible. We may not expect 100%, but please come up so that let us have something close to reality. Okay. You cannot bring in a 2020 Corolla, for example, and tell us that you bought it for $5,000 because the person you bought it from is your brother. Mr.
Bomadi, quickly, because we're winding down now. Quickly, before we go, you have suspended the implementation of this VIN policy for the next 30 days. What are you expecting to happen within the next 30 days before you begin to implement it? Are you going to continue having meetings with stakeholders and explaining exactly what your intentions are?
The policy was not suspended. I read in the news somebody said that it has not been suspended. What the management intends to do, we are looking at our options. We've listened to the complaints of the stakeholders. We are reassessing our system to see if there are, things that can be amended to accommodate some of the complaints of these stakeholders. So, but what we are doing within the next 30 days will be to run the automated system side by side the manual system to aid the congestion of the ports. First of all, we were not the ones that called for the strike. Agents called for the strike, and they resorted to strike in contravention of dispute resolution principles.
Okay.
You have engagements and other things
just one second there, Mr. Bomodi. The issues are very many. Most certainly the issues are very many. Mr. Farrington, you want to quickly respond to something?
Am I still talking, please?
No, hold on, Mr. Bomodi. Mr. Farrington wants to respond to something you said earlier.
Yes, I just want to say that it is very, very unfortunate that we're thinking like this. If Mr. Bomodi will come on air, where over 30 million Nigerians are watching and tell us that they are not suspended the policy, knowing fully well that these consignments are accumulating storage in our seaport, it shows the kind of person we have in this era, and it's very, very unfortunate. However, let me quickly say this. The moment they introduced the VIM policy, I remember I called the Askuda ACG. I told him that you want to implement this thing, fine. I asked him 3 questions he could answer. Number one, the first one is that you have not carried along the stakeholders. He said they will call us. I said, the second thing, where did you see the value that you imposed in the system? He could not answer that one. I said, thirdly, you and I know that this value are outrageous. It cannot fly because a vehicle that is bought for $5,000 in your system is there for $15,000, $20,000. How do you think Nigerians will allow this thing to sail? It is very, very unfortunate. And that's why I want to advise Nigerian importers. It is better we start going to court to stop most of this illegitimate things that our customs is doing. It is very unfortunate if the national PR will come on air and tell us that they have not suspended it, knowing fully well that over 1 billion naira has been lost.
All right, Mr. Farrington, I'll take that as your closing thoughts. Just a second. I'll take that as your closing thoughts on this issue. Mr. Miwero, you've heard Mr. Farrington say perhaps the only other resolution is to go to court, irrespective of what Mr. Bomodi has said. What are your final words?
The final words, like I said, we have 5 of our members in that town hall meeting, And those are the members that confronted them and tell them what they are doing is illegal. You see, if you look at Bomadi, he's a civil servant. Tell us where you have the rights to do what you are doing. When Farrington is talking about carrying stakeholders, you don't need a stakeholder once you do the right thing. You don't need a stakeholder. And this thing is not a policy. VIN is not a policy. I have not seen it passed by the minister. And I want to tell customs, all what you are doing is illegal. If the minister does not sign it, under the provision of your act, all of you will go to jail one day.
Okay.
Because there's nowhere that gave you power to do what you are doing.
Mr. Miwero, let's consider this a conversation starter. I want to hope that with this blown open, so to speak, there will be an invitation to the major stakeholders, including yourself and Mr. Farrington, on this so that the issues can be resolved. For now, we have to thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of our conversation this morning. Lucky Miwero is President, National Council of Managing Directors of Licensed Customs Agents. He joined us from Abuja. Mr. Timmy Bomodi is the National PRO, Public Relations Officer of Nigeria Customs Service. Thank you for joining us, as well as Mr. Kayode Farrington, who is Vice President, Association of Nigeria Licensed Customs Agents. He joined us virtually from London. Gentlemen, I can see that you are already smiling at each other. Resolve your issues. Don't let the cost of vehicles be too expensive for us to bear. Thank you very much. All right, we'll be back after now to take on another issue. Please stay with us.